Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: Young and the Restless spoilers reveal the secrets of Kane and Amanda's murky relationship. Amanda is now holding Kane's most important secrets. Amanda walks in with the calm demeanor of a lawyer accustomed to weighing the lines between ethics and utility. But beneath that mask are countless emotional veins that are not easy to hide. The topic of the meeting seems purely business, but then quickly slips into the private realm. Lily, Hillary, Devin, Yabby. Names woven into their lives like knots that cannot be untied. Amanda admits something she rarely says out loud. Sometimes she feels like Lily's gaze is still reflecting the spirit of Hillary, her twin sister, who is long gone, but whose shadow still lingers in Genoa City. And then Amanda confessed Lily was not a cold stone. After Devin betrayed her for Abby, Lily's sympathy for Amanda had grown. Not pity, but the kind of understanding that could only come from a similar experience of betrayal. Lily understood, because she had been deceived by Daniel herself. That cut did not make her a victim. It forged a layer of armor that was both soft and hard, forgiving and keeping enough distance to not fall again. Hearing this, Kane sat still. He did not deny his mistakes, nor did he rush to defend himself. The only thing he asked, and asked as if the answer could determine the course of his life, was whether Lily still saw any good in him. He did not ask for a reunion, nor did he have any vague illusions. What he wanted was a moral anchor to know that he was still qualified to enter any chance of redemption. Amanda did not answer right away. She knew that empathy was not a blank check, nor a passport to the past. But she also knew that in the art of healing, sometimes an admission of wrongdoing coupled with a course of action could be powerful. So Amanda encouraged Kane to cultivate empathy into something concrete, a safe line of communication, a rhythm of approach that respected boundaries, a way to listen before speaking. She told him not to try to convince Lily to love again. Let Lily see that he respected her pain, and more importantly, that he was taking responsibility for the present. But Kane brought more than a broken heart to the meeting. He also brought a plan so bold that it sounded more like a lab experiment than a business strategy. His AI, which had been aborted at the last minute, but not lost, was at the intersection of risk and control. Amanda probed. Was he really sure he wanted to hand it over to Billy? Billy, who had a history of being both impulsive and genius, who could turn a strategic tool into a lever that could burn overnight. Not exactly handover, Kane explained. He had embedded a layer of covert control into the system's architecture, a layer of control that Billy would never know about. In theory, Billy thought he was in control, but in any overshoot scenario, Kane could intervene to change course, limit damage, or shut it down remotely. Amanda frowned. She understood the appeal of covert control power. It satisfied both a need for self-preservation and the illusion of invincibility. But legally, it was a minefield of flashpoints: the deception in the deal, the risk of exposing the back door, the possibility of being seen as distributing a market manipulation tool, or a data breach if Billy used it to attack a competitor. Ethically, it set a dangerous precedent. If the goal was to prove he'd changed to Lily, was a plan built on secrecy and concealment the right bridge. Amanda reminded Kane of the hard lessons of Genoa City. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. No secret stays hidden forever. When the moral veneer is scratched, the whole wall begins to crumble. She asked him to be more specific about the scope of his authority, what the back door could and couldn't do, were it logged, what criteria would be used to save the person who intervened, and who would supervise the supervisor. Kane listened, nodding at some points, remaining silent at others. Outside the glass window, the city continued to spin its wheels of scandal and opportunity. He understood that Amanda was speaking the language of both profession and conscience. He also understood that if he did not take a strong enough step to leap out of the shadow of the past, he would remain an echo in someone else's story. He wanted to give AI to Billy, not just to trade resources for influence, but to position himself as a frame maker rather than a frame breaker. Another part of him, the The survival instinct that had sustained him through countless falls whispered that having an off switch was the only way to sleep at night in the city. Amanda was still worried. She worried for her clients, for her friends, for herself. She knew every line had a price. She knew that her moral compass sometimes spun in the too strong magnetic fields of power and pride. At the end of the meeting, she sent Kane a final message. If she wanted Lily to see the good in him, let safety mean being more transparent, not better at hiding things. A non-aggressive piece of advice, just a light outline for him to choose from. The door closed behind Amanda, leaving the room with the smell of polished wood and the sound of the second hand ticking. Kane sat back facing two imaginary graphs. One was the rapidly increasing opportunity curve when shaking hands with Billy. The other was the steep risk curve if the backdoor secret was revealed. In his mind, Lily's face appeared not in a nostalgic light, but in a realistic color, a woman who had grown through loss and betrayal, who knew how to listen, but also knew how to say enough. He wondered if one day she would be able to look at him and admit, "Yes, you have changed in a way that is safe for others, not just safe for yourself." On another level of the city, Billy was probably preparing a new game, what he did best, and that only spurred Kane to make a decision. He pulled out his phone and wrote a brief text to Billy. "We're closing on the terms as we discussed. Yes or no?" His finger hovered over the send button for a second like a swimmer who'd edged his board, peering into the cold water. Then he pressed the button. The message raced through the invisible waves of signals, finding Billy, whose single yes could set the gears of a series of machines in motion. On the other end, the phone vibrated on the darkwood desk next to a stack of files that Billy was trying to turn into a winning map. If Billy nodded, the AI software would enter the scene as an accelerator, pushing campaigns to new levels of efficiency, enabling competitor analysis, market simulation, even guiding moves that he'd previously had to trade off with fallible intuition. But if Billy discovers the underlying layer of coordination, even a shadow of it, a seismic shift will begin in the budding relationship between two people who both believe they have control. Kane is not delusional. He knows the history of Genoa City. Secrets don't last long, and friendships based on secrets last even shorter. But he's also no longer reactive. He has risk maps, contingency plans, safety switches designed to stop the ramp from going over the edge. Why does this still make sense to Lily? Because if the best-case scenario plays out, Billy agrees. The AI is deployed within a minimal legal framework. The layers of oversight Amanda recommends are built into the contract. Then Kane has a story to tell, not in words, but in results. A system that could easily be weaponized has become a safety net that prevents needless harm. He could one day look Lily in the eye and say, "I chose control to protect others, not to manipulate them." On the other hand, if the worst came to the worst, secrets leaked, trusts blown, legal action, he would have the one thing he'd lacked before, a plan to accept responsibility. Amanda had planted the seed. She reminded him that redemption wasn't a night of fireworks, but long days of enduring difficult decisions in the midday sun. The message on Billy's screen was still waiting. An ellipsis appeared, disappeared, appeared again. At the Grand Phoenix, Kane looked at his watch, feeling his heartbeat in time with the needle. He remembered Amanda's words: set boundaries, be transparent where possible, prepare for audits, and most importantly, put people before victory. He opened his laptop and revised the draft agreement, adding a risk gatekeeper clause overseen by a third party, inserting an emergency key activation process with an automated pen, adding a pledge not to collect end-user data. The words turned a vague idea into a binding commitment. It wasn't perfect, but it was the first step in turning hidden power into tangible responsibility. A short ring cut through the air. Kane's phone screen lit up with a new message from Billy. Just one word, no more, no less. Carrying the promise of glory and the acrid smell of danger.
Agree.
And in that moment, amid the hidden clouds, a slender path opened up for Kane. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. a path that he hoped, if walked steadily and correctly, would take him to the day when Lily no longer saw Hillary and Amanda, but a version of himself who had learned to protect instead of hide, to keep his word instead of his right, and to know that redemption was a journey with no shortcuts. In the darkening dusk of Genoa City, a secret conversation was taking place in a quiet corner of the bar at the Grand Phoenix Hotel. Kane arrived early, setting his phone down next to his steaming cup of coffee, resisting the urge to glance at his watch every 3 minutes. He knew this meeting was more than just a strategic exchange. It was also a test of whether he had truly emerged from his old mistakes. When Amanda appeared, her professional calm could not hide her human embarrassment. They sat across from each other, half a table apart, enough to keep them safe, enough to keep their honest words from stumbling over a wall of defense. Amanda began with something few people dared to say outright: the painful connection between her and Hillary in the eyes of those who had loved and resented her. She confessed that sometimes when Lily looked at her, what Lily saw was not Amanda, a lawyer, a woman who had chosen to stay in Genoa City, but Hillary, her twin sister with a complicated history. But Amanda was fair. Lily, after all, was no longer on the other side. Since Devon had gone astray, letting his heart slip away to Abby, Lily had opened a window of sympathy. She understood the numbness of betrayal because she had felt it herself with Daniel. Amanda said it as a matter of fact. Lily was strong with clear boundaries, but not frozen. Forgiveness and vigilance could coexist in a mature person. Kane listened for once, not interjecting with arguments or excuses. He asked in a slower pace than usual if Lily could still see the good in him. The question was brutally simple because it brought back all the wrong moves he had made, the broken promises over the years. Amanda didn't rush to answer. She saw through Kane's confident facade and saw a man who was trying to change, not because he wanted to regain something, but because he wanted to stop being the first name to be suspected when trouble arose. She suggested if he really wanted Lily to see him differently, he should start by letting her see him put people before victory, transparency before risk, responsibility before pride. Cultivate that empathy into a healthy friendship. That was the way to get closer, not to suddenly reopen a closed door. Then the conversation turned to more stormy territory. The AI software Kane had in his hands. An asset that was both an opportunity and the spark that would set off a chain of unpredictable consequences. Amanda asked directly, was he sure he would give it to Billy? Billy was the kind of guy who could turn a bold idea into a spectacular victory, but also the kind who could flip the entire board on a whim. Kane responded with a carefully crafted plan. This was not carte blanche. The system architecture had a hidden layer of regulation, a safety margin that he could trigger if Billy overstepped his bounds. It didn't read private data or touch user information. It regulated risk thresholds, deployment speeds, model replication rights, and interactions with external systems. If Billy pushed the tool too far into the red, Kane could freeze dangerous modules for tens of seconds with an automated pen for later inspection. Technically, Amanda understood it was a gatekeeper system that made sense. Legally and ethically, she was still uneasy. Users thought they were holding the steering wheel, but there was a handbrake just out of sight, which, if discovered, could instantly transform from safety to betrayal. Billy hated feeling controlled. His anger, combined with the market buzz and opportunistic opponents waiting in the wings, could turn a contractual dispute into a reputational crisis. Amanda proposes a middle ground. Write into the agreement the existence of a risk gatekeeper mechanism audited by a third party. Define emergency conditions that warrant intervention. Mandate intervention logs to prevent abuse. And commit to limiting functionality to a secure technical layer with absolutely no access to user data or trade secrets. That way, instead of a secret backdoor, they have a minimally transparent, independently monitored security system. Kane thought about it for a long time. He knew that the advice was a way to move away from his old trajectory, the trajectory of vague agreements of let's do it now, worry about it later. But he also knew that Billy would be wary of any clause that gave someone else control. In the stalemate, Amanda looked straight at Kane and repeated, "You want Lily to see the good in you? Then choose the right thing now." The change came not from a monologue, but from binding words that could be tested. Turn good intentions into good mechanisms. Be open to scrutiny when necessary. By the time Amanda's coffee had a brown stain at the bottom, the two had discussed every aspect. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Market strategy if they partnered with Billy, the chain reaction if a competitor caught wind of it, how to protect innocent people from too powerful a tool, and especially the price of a secret leaking at the wrong time. Amanda also suggested something less obvious. Proactively set up an ethics dashboard with preset stopgaps for borderline situations, such as never using simulations to manipulate media evidence, never automating personal attacks, never activating features that could potentially invade privacy. These lines, when set up early and signed by all parties, would save them if things went airy. Leaving the Grand Phoenix, Amanda knew she had said what she needed to say. The decision was up to Kane, who was at a crossroads. Speed and stealthy control on one side, transparency and significant but sustainable delay on the other. In a rare, quiet moment, Kane saw both scenarios clearly. In the first scenario, he handed the software to Billy with a clean slate, keeping the intervention layer as a lifeline he believed no one would see. They would rush forward. The rush of victory might come early, but each step would be tinged with the fear of being discovered. In the second scenario, he accepted some of the tools, accepted some questioning, even accepted some of the advantages. In exchange, he could look Amanda in the eye, himself in the eye, and one day Lily in the eye, not to beg for information, but to show that he had done the right thing. Evening fell. Kane opened his laptop, editing the draft agreement in the direction Amanda had suggested, adding a risk gatekeeper clause overseen by a third party, specifying that the scope of intervention was limited to technical safety, requiring written records and 24-hour post-audit notices, establishing a project ethics committee with independent legal representation. It was an agreement he knew Billy would frown on. But if he wanted to get out of the gray area of the past, this was the only way to avoid falling back into the quagmire. He saved the file, took a deep breath, and turned to his phone screen. The text to Billy was brief. "We've closed as discussed. Accept or not." Behind those 10 words were dozens of pages of appendices, hundreds of hours of thought, and a long-term plan to put technological power back in its proper place, not to turn it into the private secret of any one ego. The phone vibrated. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Appeared again. Time suddenly stretched like an over-tightened string. While waiting, Kane thought about Lily. He didn't paint his hopes in a rosy light. He imagined a very realistic day. They would meet for work, have a normal conversation, no avoidance, and Lily, not out of pity, would admit that he had become more careful, set clearer boundaries, no longer a pendulum that only knew how to swing between ambition and failure. Perhaps then the shadow of Hillary and Lily's eyes would also be less intense when she looked at Amanda, because those present knew how to move forward without using the past as an excuse. The message bell lit up. Agreed. Meet tomorrow morning to sign. Just 2 sentences, but enough to get the gears turning. Kane replied immediately. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Grand Phoenix. I've brought the new draft. He knew that meeting would be a hurdle. Billy would question the gatekeeping mechanism, would demand to reduce third-party control, would try to make every barrier optional, and that would be Kane's real test, whether he would slip back into his old ways, softened by the desire to compromise quickly, or hold firm to the line Amanda had drawn. Jenny City didn't sleep that night. Office lights were still on. Late calls were coming in. Calculations were being made. Elsewhere, Devin and Abby were probably busy with their own projects, unaware that a decision they just made could soon affect the entire city's pulse. Lily, somewhere between work and her own life lessons, was probably allowing herself an evening of not thinking too much, but the undercurrent was still running, and by morning, news of the new alliance might reach her, forcing her to reconsider her trust in an environment where emotions and interests often went hand in hand. Kane sent Amanda a short email, the draft, the compliance points, and one final sentence. "Thanks for saying the hard things." Amanda replied in 3 lines without embellishment. "Keep the lines. If Billy wants it, he'll understand." Subscribe our channel for more latest update. If not, at least you did your part. At the Grand Phoenix, the elevator opened. Billy emerged with a tactical smile and calculating eyes. After shaking hands, Kane pushed the stack of papers across from him. The cover bore the project's name, and the risk gatekeeper mechanism was no longer a footnote, but a full-length spineless section. The negotiations would continue, and other characters would eventually join the fray. But at this moment, the story had grown beyond software. It had become a test of how humans choose to wield power, hidden or exposed, hasty or persistent, alone or bound, to make it safer for all. For Kane, it was also a message to the woman he had hurt. If he were ever allowed to stay in her orbit, that permission would come not because of promises, but because of the boundaries he had kept, the doors he had not opened without permission, and the terms he had insisted on living in ink, not just words. When Billy's pen touched the first line of his signature, a new chapter opened, quiet but weighty. From here, every choice left a mark. And it was those marks, if placed correctly, that could redraw Lily's image of Kane, no longer someone who was chasing after wins and losses, but someone who dared to slow down to get it right. The answer to the question, "Does Lily still see the good in me?" would not come today. Subscribe our channel for more latest update.